Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Tanya-tastic Talks. So you guys, I was featured in the Daily Mail. Can you believe that? So the first half of this video will be about my story for those of you that are just finding me right now from searching either my name or searching symptoms or Ramsay Hunt Syndrome or Shingles, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And the second half will be talking about how this actually came about in terms of the article getting published, how did it get picked up, how do these types of things happen on the internet today with social media and all that jazz. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's jump right in. Story. So one thing that the article talked about was that I was a teacher. It's not my full-on profession. I was an adjunct professor / am an adjunct professor still for a university here in Montreal. And I was teaching my first course in counseling in French, which is my second language. I was very nervous about that. So I taught that course over the course of 5 Saturdays from 9:30 to 4:30 every second Saturday, basically going from there. And then I had to mark everything. And so doing all of that was very stressful and nerve-wracking because I also had another job, my regular 9-to-5 job, apart from this. And so it was just a lot to handle. I was also speaking at different conferences and everything was just back to back to back to back to back. If I had known, in hindsight, obviously, if I had known that things were going to be so cramped, I would have tried to manage things differently and obviously would have arranged my schedule so that it wouldn't have been so jam-packed with everything all at the same time. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Yeah, I had just finished correcting all the assignments and submitting all of my marks for that class. I went to work the next day. I had an ear cramp that whole day and a very bad headache, and I didn't understand what was going on. I even wrote about it on Facebook, thinking that it was just my emotions that were kind of off because I was just overtired and I felt like maybe I was just decompressing. I then went to the graduation ceremony on the Saturday, and I woke up with this intense pain right in this area, all in my jaw, but particularly where my ear was and my jaw. And I thought I just need to take some Advil. During the ceremony, my face started to twitch, my lip, my eye, and I knew, and it was only on one side, and I knew, okay, this is weird. This is not normal. So I need to figure this out. The pain was not decreasing. The whole day, it had not decreased. I had taken a picture of myself and I realized for some reason that half of my face was not reacting. I thought it was maybe something wrong with the camera. I didn't know. It was so slight that it didn't feel like any cause for concern. Then I started to feel a numbness in my face, and then I couldn't blink my eye. The eye was twitching then on and off. For those of you who are worried that this might be you, I had noticed that there was some kind of a sore or pimple in my ear. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't know anything about shingles. One thing about the chickenpox is that if you have it, or if you've gotten it as a child or as a teenager or whatever, that virus lays dormant and goes to sleep in your body. And then, for whatever reason, usually caused by stress, but not always, it can reactivate and wake itself up and be like, oh, I'm gonna go in Tanya's ear and, check things out. It will always follow a nerve pathway. It can happen on your shoulder. It can happen on your stomach, your rib cage, your legs, your neck, anywhere where there's honestly a nerve on your face, anywhere. So just be aware of that. And the reason why it's called Ramsay Hunt Syndrome is because it's the presentation of shingles in the ear and facial paralysis. If it was only facial paralysis, it would be called Bell's palsy. I think if you do end up in this situation, and let's say they don't find a shingle in your ear, I would still ask for antiviral medication to be taken along with steroids that they will prescribe you. If it's Bell's palsy, some doctors don't believe that antivirals and steroids are always beneficial when put together. But I would say, because I'm not a medical professional, okay? But because of the fact that there are misdiagnoses happening, I do think that it would be important just to make sure, in case they've missed something, I would ask for antiviral medication like valacyclovir. That's what I was prescribed, but I was prescribed too late, and that's why this whole thing happened. So you have a 72-hour window of when you have shingles, or when it's first seen, to then get on antivirals. Otherwise, you will end up with increased nerve pain and all of that. I still experience nerve pain, especially in our Canadian winter here. I also still experience, obviously, hyperacusis, as you've seen in the article. Again, if you experience any of these symptoms of numbness in the face, a facial droop, talking out of one side of the mouth, your eye not being able to close or twitching like crazy, a lot of pain. Everyone experiences it differently. The way I experience it might be different from the way you have experienced it, if you've experienced this, or if you have yet to potentially experience this in your lifetime. I hope it does not happen to you. Every body is different. Secondly, we're going to move on to, how did this whole thing happen? So, I was contacted actually back at the end of November in 2018 by a woman who worked for a smaller news agency in the UK. I was contacted actually on Instagram first, and then it went to an email, my email address that's connected to this account. She wrote me an official email from her news agency. She had found my video on YouTube. She thought it was very interesting because I was so young, and so they cover a lot of health conditions and people's stories. So they wanted this to be something that was inspirational and that could give hope to those, and awareness, because this type of condition is not often talked about, nor is it even heard of in the UK, let alone the US or Canada or anywhere really. I hope that in the future and in the years to come, that it will become more common knowledge that things like this can happen to someone. That facial paralysis on one side does not necessarily mean it's Bell's palsy, but that it could also mean that there's a shingle somewhere that someone may have not caught that is there, and that is affecting, the person's inner ear, which is then affecting the facial nerve. So contacted by her, she then emailed me back we kind of went back and forth. She asked a bunch of questions. I then responded to those questions, wrote out a whole big thing. I included many photos of myself during that time, before everything hit versus after. I also explained a little bit more about the neurological condition that I was diagnosed with after Ramsay Hunt Syndrome. And so she just mentioned that the article was going to be published. And so I was basically just waiting to hear back from her. And lo and behold, I was contacted by someone on Facebook who I do not know. And it was a person who was saying, "Thank you for this article. I had shingles myself, and thank you for your article in the Daily Mail." And I'm like, the Daily Mail? Like, okay. So I go literally Google my name and Daily Mail, and it shows up. And I'm like, whoa, this is intense. I mean, there was a possibility that one of these bigger news agencies like the Daily Mail would pick this thing up, or the BBC, or, I wasn't banking on that at all. I was just happy that someone saw my story and wanted to get it out there, regardless of how much viewership it was going to necessarily get. I didn't know what stories would get picked up by a news agency like the Daily Mail, but it was. I think they did a fantastic job at looking at how this condition affected me, how my recovery was, then moving into the future in terms of what happened after with this neurological condition. They explained both of these conditions very well. I was very happy about that. And I tried to include in here like a lot of signs that people could maybe relate to, or like remember if they're ever having something like this happen. Some of the timeline did get messed up. Like if you see the if you go to the article and you look at some of the photos of me in the hospital, other than the one with my mom, the other ones in the hospital were actually in September of 2017 when I was hospitalized for a week, when I was then diagnosed with functional neurological disorder. So that was the one thing that they got a bit wrong. But other than that, I mean, that's fine. And then the picture with the dog is from Christmas Day. I was with the family and we were celebrating. And so the fact that I could have a dog in my arms and, you know, be able to function at least a little bit in that photo. I was downstairs with everyone for about 15 minutes. That's how much I could handle, but I'm thankful for that. But if you have any other questions about the article, about my story, leave them in the comments below. I will leave my original video chronicling my whole journey with Ramsay Hunt Syndrome down in the description box. I will also link the article. If you like this video, give it a big like. If you have yet to subscribe to me, then subscribe and check out more videos.